Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
It was a warm and pleasant day. The sun shone bright, and the shade under the apple tree was cool. A soft wind moved the leaves of the old tree where Mr. Jerningham, the philosopher, sat. He was reading a big book on his lap. Sometimes the wind turned the pages, and he got annoyed, fixing the pages to find his place again. The book was about philosophy, written by a friend of his. Mr. Jerningham enjoyed finding mistakes in it and writing notes in the back of the book. He wasn't writing a review or planning to argue with his friend. He simply enjoyed finding errors. Soon, a girl in a white dress came into the orchard. She picked an apple, took a bite, and found it was ripe. She walked to where the philosopher sat, eating her apple and watching him. He didn't notice her until she spoke. "Mr. Jerningham, are you very busy?" she asked. He looked up with his pencil in hand. "Not very, Miss May," he said. "I need your advice," she said. "Just a moment," he replied, finishing his note. Then he closed the book and looked at her. The girl sat down in front of him. "It's an important question," she began. "Please don't tell anyone," I asked. "And please don't look at me while I'm talking." "I won't tell anyone, and I wasn't looking, but I'll make sure not to," he said politely. She pulled at some grass nervously. Suppose a girl had two men in her life. One of them really loved her and... The philosopher interrupted. "Wait, let me write that down." "What did he do?" "He asked her to marry him," the girl explained, a bit annoyed. "Oh, of course," said the philosopher, realizing his mistake. "The girl likes him well enough, and her family likes him too," she said. "That makes it simpler," said the philosopher, nodding. "But she's not really in love with him. She doesn't care for him that much. Do you understand?" "Yes, that's very common," said the philosopher. "Now, suppose there's another man. Wait, what are you writing?" "I just wrote B for the second man," he explained, showing his notebook. She looked at him, half annoyed but smiling a little. "You really are impossible," she said. "Anyway, the other man is her friend. He's very clever, really clever, and also good-looking. But don't write that down. That's not very important," he agreed, crossing out handsome, but leaving clever. "And the girl admires him so much. She thinks he's the greatest man ever. She'd give anything to, she paused. "I'm listening," said the philosopher, ready with his pencil. "She'd think it was the best thing in the world if she could be something to him," she said. "You mean, marry him?" he asked. "Yes, of course," she replied. "All right, I see. And then?" asked the philosopher. "But," the girl said, pulling at some grass, "the other man doesn't think much about these things. I think he likes her." "He doesn't dislike her?" asked the philosopher. "Shall we say he doesn't care much?" "Yes, maybe. He doesn't really think about it. But she's pretty. You don't need to write that." "I wasn't going to," said the philosopher. "She thinks life with him would be perfect. She believes she could make him very happy. She would be so proud of him." "I see. Go on." "And she thinks that if he ever thought about it, he might care for her. He doesn't care for anyone else, and she's pretty." "You already said that." "Oh, did I? Anyway, Most men care about some girl, don't they? Most men do, agreed the philosopher. So what should she do? It's not real, Mr. Jerningham. It's from a book I read, she added quickly, blushing. I see. A very interesting case. The question is, should she marry the man who loves her, but whom she only likes as a friend? Yes, just a friend. Or the other man she loves. Wait. He hasn't asked her, she interrupted. True. Let's imagine he does ask her. Then she'd need to think about which choice would bring more happiness. No, you don't need to figure it out like that. I know what she'd do if the other man asked her. You think. Never mind what I think. Just take it as I said. One man has asked her and the other hasn't. Got it, said the philosopher. Without B, would A be a good choice for her? Asked the philosopher. Yes, I think so, she said. So, she would be fairly happy if she married A? Yes, but not perfectly happy because of B, she replied. Of course, because of B. But still, some happiness, right? Maybe, she said softly. And if B asked her, would she be much happier? Yes, much happier for her. Don't worry about him. Understood. But B asking her is uncertain. Yes, just a possibility, she admitted. The philosopher spread his hands. Then it's a question of chances. How likely is it? I don't know, not very likely. Unless what? He asked. Unless he noticed her, you know. If he noticed her, he might ask. Could she show him how she feels? She could try, but not much. He doesn't think about these things. I see, said the philosopher. And in that, I believe, we find our answer. Do we? She asked, looking at him. I think he doesn't naturally like her, said the philosopher. Maybe he doesn't want to marry anyone. Any feeling she stirs in him would be shallow and wouldn't last. If she tries to get his attention, two things might happen. Are you following me? Yes, Mr. Jerningham. Either he would not like her efforts, and that would be unpleasant for her, or he might feel sorry for her and pretend to care, but it wouldn't be real. Do you agree? Yes, unless he truly started to care for her, she said softly. That's unlikely. No, she shouldn't marry A unless she really wants to. But she must not chase B. The philosopher closed his book and leaned back. The girl pulled apart a dandelion. After a long pause, she asked, Do you think B might ever feel differently? It depends on the man. If he's busy with his work and doesn't need women's company. Yes, that's him, she said, biting a daisy. Then no, his feelings probably won't change. Should she marry A? She asked. On the whole, yes. A is a good man who loves her truly. She likes him, and her feelings might grow. She'll forget about B and make A a good wife. If this were your story, I'd have her marry A and call it a happy ending. A silence followed. Then the philosopher asked, Is that all, Miss May? Yes. I hope I didn't bore you. I enjoyed it very much. I didn't know novels could be so interesting. The girl turned her head to look at the paddock, her voice soft. Do you think B might feel sorry later, after she married A, if he found out how much she cared for him? If he's a gentleman, yes, he would regret it. I mean, sorry for himself. That he lost something so special. That's possible, said the philosopher. He might never find anyone to love him like that again, she said, still gazing at the paddock. Probably not, agreed the philosopher. And most people like being loved, don't they? She asked. Yes, it's something almost everyone wants, he replied. She gave a small sad smile. He'll grow old and have no one to care for him. He will, the philosopher said. And no home, said the girl softly. Well, not really a home, said the philosopher with a smile. But you'll scare me, Miss May. I'm not married either, you know. Yes, she whispered. And all your worries apply to me too. Unless, she began. Oh, no, unless, he laughed. There's no unless, Miss May. The girl quickly stood up. She looked at him for a moment, her face turning red as if she wanted to say something. But the philosopher was looking past her, staring calmly at the sunny field. Sunshine is such a beautiful thing, he said. Her blush faded and she grew pale. Without a word, she turned and walked away slowly, her head low. The philosopher heard the sound of her dress in the grass and watched her for a moment. A pretty and graceful girl, he said with a smile. Then he opened his book again, marked a page, and went back to reading. By the time he finished the book, the sun had moved westward. He looked at his watch. Goodness, it's 2:00. I'll be late for lunch. He quickly stood up and hurried inside. At lunch, his hostess complained, "Everything is cold." "Where have you been, Mr. Jerningham?" "In the orchard, reading," he replied. "And you missed May." "Missed Miss May? What do you mean?" "We had a long talk this morning, a very interesting one. But you weren't here to say goodbye. She left on the 2:00 train." "How could you forget?" "Oh no, I forgot." "How silly of me," he said, feeling embarrassed. "She told me to say goodbye to you," his hostess added. "That's very kind of her." "I can't believe I forgot," he said. His hostess looked at him, sighed, smiled, and sighed again. "Do you have everything you need?" she asked. "Yes, everything I could want. Thank you," he said, sitting down with his book propped against the loaf of bread. She didn't tell him that the girl had run upstairs, hiding her teary eyes after coming back from the orchard. The philosopher had no idea that he had unknowingly refused her unspoken feelings. Later, as he read, he paused and said, "I'm really sorry I missed Miss May. That was such an interesting case. But I gave the right advice. The girl should marry, eh?" And so she did.